She worked as the millionaire's secretary until a midnight meeting made his heart tremble forever. Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. The elevator's soft hum was the only sound breaking the silence of the 42nd floor at 11:47 p.m. Amanda Lewis adjusted the stack of contracts in her arms, her dark eyes reflecting the city lights streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Most of Manhattan slept below, but here, in the heart of Hart Industries, she remained, as she had every night for the past 3 years. Her silk blouse, wrinkled from the long day, clung to her tired frame, yet she moved with the quiet grace of someone who had learned to navigate corporate waters without making waves. The reception desk felt different in the darkness. During the day, it buzzed with phone calls, urgent meetings, and the constant parade of executives demanding her attention. Now, it was her sanctuary, a place where she could organize not just files, but her thoughts. She glanced toward the corner office where a single light still glowed. James Hart was still there, of course. The man who built an empire on precision and control never left before ensuring every detail was perfect. Amanda had studied his patterns for 3 years, memorizing the rhythm of his footsteps, the way he tapped his pen when deep in thought, the exact tone he used when he was pleased, though that happened rarely. Her phone buzzed. A text from her younger brother, Quincy. "Sis, you're working too late again. Remember what Mum used to say about all work and no play." Amanda smiled softly, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. Their mother had said many things before cancer took her voice away 2 years ago. One of them was that love finds you when you least expect it, in places you never thought to look. Amanda had dismissed it then, but lately those words echoed in quiet moments like these. "Amanda." The deep voice made her heart skip. James Hart stood in his office doorway, his usually perfect tie loosened, the top button of his white shirt undone. Even exhausted, he commanded the space around him with an intensity that made lesser men step back. But Amanda had learned to hold her ground. "Yes, Mr. Hart?" She set down her phone, professional mask sliding into place. "I need you to review the Morrison contract before tomorrow's board meeting." He paused, studying her face in the dim light. "But first, when was the last time you went home before midnight?" The question caught her off guard. In 3 years, he had never asked about her personal time. That's not necessary to discuss, sir." "James." His voice was quieter now. "When it's just us, call me James." Something in his tone made her look up, really look at him. The carefully constructed walls he wore like armor seemed thinner in the darkness. His grey eyes, usually sharp as winter steel, held something she had never seen before. Vulnerability, maybe, or recognition. "James," she repeated, testing the name on her lips. It felt dangerously intimate. He moved closer, his expensive shoes silent on the marble floor. "You know, I've been watching you." Amanda's breath caught. "Watching me? The way you handle pressure, how you never lose your composure, even when everyone else is falling apart." He stopped just feet away from her desk. "You're remarkable, Amanda. I hope you know that." The words hung between them like a bridge neither had expected to build. Amanda felt her carefully maintained professional distance beginning to crack. This was James Hart, the man who made Fortune 500 CEOs nervous, who never showed weakness, who treated emotions like liabilities to be eliminated. Yet here he was, looking at her like she was the most important person in his world. "Mr. Hart, James, I think we should..." "Should what?" He stepped closer, and she caught the faint scent of his cologne mixed with something uniquely him. "Pretend we don't feel this." Amanda's phone buzzed again, breaking the spell. A reminder about tomorrow's 7 a.m. meeting with the Morrison Group. Reality crashed back like cold water. She stood abruptly, gathering the contracts. "The Morrison files. I should..." "Amanda." Her name on his lips stopped her mid-sentence. "What are you afraid of?" She looked at him then. This powerful man who held her career in his hands, who could destroy her with a word, who was looking at her like she held all the answers he had been searching for. And in that moment, she realized her greatest fear wasn't losing her job. It was losing herself in those grey eyes that saw too much. What happens when the line between professional and personal disappears forever? Amanda didn't sleep that night. She sat by her apartment window overlooking the East Village, watching the city breathe in the pre-dawn darkness, while James Hart's words echoed in her mind. "What are you afraid of?" The question had followed her home, settled into her bones, and refused to let her rest. At 5:30 a.m. she gave up pretending to sleep. Her small studio apartment felt suffocating, filled with the memory of grey eyes that saw too much. She made coffee with trembling hands, the same hands that had nearly reached for him in that charged moment before reality intervened. By 6:45 a.m., she was back at Hart Industries, hoping to lose herself in work before the building filled with people who might read too much in her face. The elevator ride to the 42nd floor felt eternal, each floor a heartbeat closer to seeing him again. The reception area was exactly as she'd left it, contracts stacked neatly, her desk organized to perfection. But something felt different. The air itself seemed to hum with the memory of what had almost happened. "You're early." Amanda spun around, coffee mug slipping from her fingers. James caught it before it could shatter against the marble floor, his reflexes quick, his proximity sudden and overwhelming. "Careful," he murmured, setting the mug safely on her desk. His fingers brushed hers for a heartbeat longer than necessary. "I wanted to finish the Morrison review," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "Of course you did." There was something new in his expression, a softness that made her chest tighten. "Amanda, about last night." "Good morning, you two." Helena Lane's voice cut through the moment like a blade. She emerged from the elevator wearing a crimson suit that commanded attention and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Her auburn hair was perfectly styled despite the early hour, and she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had never questioned her place in any room. "Helena." James stepped back from Amanda, his professional mask sliding into place with practiced ease. "You're here early. Big day ahead." Helena's gaze flickered between them, sharp and assessing. "I wanted to discuss the Morrison presentation before the board meeting. I have some concerns about our current approach." Amanda felt the shift in the room's energy. Helena had worked at Hart Industries for 2 years, always perfectly competent, always strategically positioned wherever James happened to be. But there was something different about her this morning, a territorial edge that made Amanda's skin prickle. "The approach Amanda and I developed is solid," James said, his tone cooling several degrees. "Oh, I'm sure it is." Helena's smile was razor-sharp. "But sometimes fresh perspective can prevent costly mistakes. Amanda, honey, would you mind getting us some coffee? I know how James likes his extra shot, no sugar. We'll be in the conference room." The dismissal was subtle but unmistakable. Amanda felt heat rise in her cheeks, not from embarrassment but from the quiet fury of being reduced to a coffee girl in front of the man who had called her remarkable 12 hours ago. "Actually," James's voice carried a warning, "Amanda will be joining us. Her insights on the Morrison account are invaluable." Helena's perfectly composed expression flickered for just a moment. "Of course. How thoughtful." The conference room felt like a battleground. Helena positioned herself directly across from James, spreading her materials with theatrical precision, while Amanda took her usual seat at the side of the table, close enough to be useful, far enough to remain invisible. But James changed the rules. "Amanda, walk us through your analysis of Morrison's market position." For the next 30 minutes, Amanda presented her research with quiet authority. She had spent weeks studying Morrison Group's financial patterns, their expansion strategies, their vulnerabilities. She knew every detail, every number, every risk. Helena listened with growing tension, her manicured fingers drumming against the mahogany table. When Amanda finished, Helena's response was swift and cutting. "Impressive work, of course," she said, her voice honey over ice, "though I wonder if someone with more executive-level experience might catch strategic elements that could be missed at the administrative level." The room went silent. Amanda felt the words like a physical blow, designed to remind everyone present of their respective places in the corporate hierarchy. James leaned back in his chair, his grey eyes turning to winter steel. "Helena, I'm going to assume you misspoke just now. I simply meant, you meant to undermine the most insightful analysis this company has produced in months." His voice was deadly quiet. "Amanda's strategic thinking is why Morrison Group requested to work specifically with Hart Industries. They've done their research. They know talent when they see it." Helena's composed mask slipped entirely. "James, surely you're not suggesting that a secretary—" "I'm suggesting," James stood, his presence filling the room, "that you apologize to Amanda for questioning her competence, and then you find somewhere else to be." The silence stretched like a held breath. Amanda watched Helena's face cycle through shock, anger, and something darker, something that promised this was far from over. "Of course," Helena said finally, gathering her materials with sharp, precise movements. "My apologies, Amanda. Clearly misunderstood the dynamic here. She paused at the door, her green eyes meeting Amanda's with unmistakable hostility. Though I do hope we can all maintain appropriate professional boundaries. For the good of the company. The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a gauntlet being thrown. James turned to Amanda, concern etched in the lines around his eyes. Are you all right? Amanda stared at the space Helena had vacated, pieces clicking into place. The early arrival, the strategic positioning, the territorial marking. Helena hadn't come to discuss Morrison Group at all. She had come to mark her territory, and Amanda was beginning to realize she was standing directly in the middle of a war she never knew she'd entered. The war began with a single email. Amanda discovered it at 2:17 p.m., buried between routine correspondence and meeting confirmations. The sender was Helena Lane. The recipient was Cornelius Morrison himself, CEO of Morrison Group, and the subject line made Amanda's blood freeze. Concerns regarding Hart Industries account management. Her hands trembled as she opened the message. Helena had copied the entire board of directors, including James. Dear Mr. Morrison, I felt compelled to reach out regarding some irregularities I've observed in your account management. While I have the utmost respect for all Hart Industries employees, I believe you deserve transparency about potential oversights in your file handling. Amanda's heart hammered against her ribs. Helena had crafted the email with surgical precision, never directly naming Amanda, never making explicit accusations, but painting a picture of incompetence and carelessness that could destroy everything Amanda had built in 3 years. She's lying. The voice behind her made Amanda jump. James stood reading over her shoulder, his face carved from granite, his grey eyes blazing with cold fury. Every word, he continued, his voice barely controlled. Morrison's files are flawless because you made them flawless. Amanda turned in her chair to face him. James, she copied the entire board. If Morrison believes this, Morrison won't believe it because I won't let him. James pulled out his phone, his fingers moving with deadly purpose. Cancel my 3 p.m. Cancel everything until 5. What are you going to do? What I should have done this morning. His eyes met hers and Amanda saw something that made her breath catch. Protection. Fierce, unwavering protection. I'm going to remind Helena Lane why she should never underestimate either of us. 20 minutes later, Amanda watched through the glass walls of Conference Room A as James faced Helena across the mahogany table. She couldn't hear the words, but body language spoke volumes. Helena started confident, leaning forward with animated gestures. James remained statue still, his presence filling the room like gathering storm clouds. Gradually, Helena's confidence cracked, her shoulders tensed, her hands moved less freely, and when James finally spoke, one long, uninterrupted monologue, Helena's face went pale as winter sky. You're staring. Amanda spun to find Tobias Reed, the head of legal, standing beside her desk with an amused expression. At 52, Tobias had seen every corporate drama Hart Industries had to offer, and his dark eyes missed nothing. They're in Conference Room A, Amanda said, trying to sound casual. Tobias adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. Helena overplayed her hand. You know about the email? Honey, I know about everything. Tobias leaned against her desk, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Helena's been positioning herself as the future Mrs. Hart for 2 years, but something changed this week, something that has her rattled enough to make desperate moves. Amanda's stomach twisted. I don't know what you mean. No. Tobias's smile was knowing. Then why has our ice-cold CEO been asking about you? Your background, your education, your work history, all very official, very professional inquiries, of course. Heat flooded Amanda's cheeks. He was checking my credentials for the Morrison account. Amanda Lewis, you are many things. Brilliant, dedicated, painfully modest, but you are not naive. Tobias straightened as the conference room door opened. And neither is Helena. James emerged first, his expression unreadable. Helena followed, her crimson suit still perfect but her composure shattered. She walked past Amanda's desk without a glance, her heels clicking rapid staccato against marble. How did it go? Amanda asked when James approached. Helena will be sending a follow-up email to Morrison within the hour, clarifying that her previous message was based on incomplete information. James's voice was professionally neutral, but Amanda caught the steel underneath. She'll also be taking a more supportive approach to interdepartmental collaboration going forward. Tobias chuckled softly. Translation? She's been thoroughly terrified. Tobias, James's tone carried a warning. Right, right. Attorney-client privilege and all that. Tobias winked at Amanda. But hypothetically speaking, someone just learned that James Hart doesn't forgive attacks on people he values. After Tobias left, silence settled between Amanda and James like settling dust. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows, painting everything in gold, and Amanda found herself studying James's profile as he reviewed documents at her desk. "Thank you," she said quietly. He looked up, and the intensity in his gaze made her heart race. "You don't need to thank me for doing what's right. Helena's not going to give up." "No," James agreed, setting down his pen. "She's not, which is why we need to be careful." "Careful." James stood, moving closer, until Amanda caught that familiar scent of expensive cologne and something uniquely him. "Amanda, what happened between us last night was a mistake," she finished quickly, the words tasting like ashes. "Was it?" His voice was soft, dangerous. "Because I've been thinking about it all day, about you, about what it means that I can't focus on anything else when you're near." Amanda's breath caught. This was territory they couldn't explore. Not here. Not with Helena circling like a predator and the entire company watching their every interaction. "James." Her desk phone rang, sharp and insistent. Amanda glanced at the caller ID and felt her world tilt. "Morrison Group," she whispered. James's eyes sharpened. "Answer it." Amanda lifted the receiver with steady hands, her professional voice sliding into place. "Hart Industries, this is Amanda Lewis." "Ms. Lewis, this is Cornelius Morrison. I received some interesting correspondence today regarding my account." Amanda's eyes met James's. His expression was calm, confident, but she could see the tension in the set of his shoulders. "Of course, Mr. Morrison. How can I assist you?" "Actually, I was calling to schedule a meeting. Tomorrow, if possible. I'd like to discuss expanding our partnership with Hart Industries." Morrison's voice warmed. "And Ms. Lewis, I specifically requested that you handle the arrangements. Your attention to detail has been remarkable." Relief flooded through Amanda like warm honey. "Absolutely, Mr. Morrison. I'll coordinate with Mr. Hart's schedule immediately." When she hung up, James was smiling, really smiling, not the polite corporate expression she was used to seeing. "Helena's plan backfired," Amanda said, hardly believing it. "Spectacularly." James moved closer, his voice dropping to that dangerous whisper that made her skin tingle. "But she'll try again, and next time, she'll be smarter about it." Amanda nodded, understanding the warning beneath his words. Helena had shown her hand too early, revealed her desperation too clearly. Next time would be different. Next time would be worse. "Amanda," James said, his hand almost touching hers on the desk. "Whatever happens next, whatever she tries..." The elevator chimed, announcing new arrivals. James stepped back smoothly as a group of executives emerged, chattering about quarterly reports and market projections. But Amanda had heard enough. Whatever Helena tried next, James would be ready. At 9:47 p.m., Amanda was still at her desk, but this time it wasn't about work. She had stayed because leaving meant going home to her empty apartment, where silence would give her mind permission to replay every moment of James's almost confession. She had stayed because the building after hours felt like neutral territory, where the rules of corporate hierarchy blurred around the edges. She hadn't stayed expecting him to emerge from his office, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing an expression that made her heart stumble. "You're still here," James said, setting 1 cup beside her keyboard. The steam carried the rich scent of her favorite Colombian blend, a detail he had somehow memorized. "So are you." Amanda wrapped her hands around the warm ceramic, grateful for something to hold. "Shouldn't you be at some high society dinner or exclusive club meeting?" "Probably." James settled into the chair across from her desk, the one usually reserved for visitors and executives, not CEOs who could buy and sell companies on a whim. "But I'd rather be here." "Why?" The question hung between them, weighted with everything they'd been dancing around for days. James leaned back, studying her face in the soft glow of her desk lamp, and Amanda felt exposed, not vulnerable, but truly seen in a way that terrified and thrilled her simultaneously. "Because," he said finally, "you're the only real thing in my world." Amanda's breath caught. "James, do you know what my life looks like, Amanda?" He interrupted gently, his voice carrying a weariness she'd never heard before. "Board meetings where every smile hides an agenda, charity galas where people compete to get closest to my wallet, dinners with women my mother handpicks, all of them perfectly suitable and completely forgettable." He leaned forward, and the space between them crackled with electricity. "Then I come here and you hand me files organized exactly the way I need them. You remember that I take calls from my nephew Landon even during board meetings because he's struggling in school. You know I drink too much coffee when I'm stressed and you quietly switch me to decaf after 4 p.m. Amanda's chest tightened. She had done all those things, small gestures she'd thought he hadn't noticed. You see me, James continued, his grey eyes holding hers captive. Not my net worth, not my connections, not what I can do for your career. Just me. That's because you are just a man, Amanda said softly, then immediately flushed at her boldness. James smiled, not his corporate smile, but something warm and private that transformed his entire face. Most people forget that. Most people are idiots. The laugh that escaped him was genuine, rich, and Amanda felt pride bloom in her chest at having caused it. This was dangerous territory, she knew. But sitting here in the golden circle of lamplight, with Manhattan glittering beyond the windows, it felt like they existed outside normal rules. Amanda. Her name on his lips was soft as prayer. I need you to know something. Before she could ask what, her phone buzzed. A text from her brother Quincy. Emergency at the hospital. Grandma Dolores fell. Can you come? The warmth drained from Amanda's face. I have to go. What's wrong? My grandmother. She's in the hospital. Amanda was already reaching for her purse, her hands shaking slightly. I need to... I'll drive you. No, that's not necessary. Amanda. James stood, his voice brooking no argument. I'm driving you. 20 minutes later, they were speeding through Queens in James's sleek Aston Martin, the city lights blurring past the windows. Amanda had given him the address to Queens General Hospital. Her phone pressed to her ear as she spoke with Quincy. How bad is it? She asked, her voice tight with worry. Broken hip, possible concussion. She's stable, but... Quincy's voice cracked. She's asking for you, Mandy. She keeps saying she needs to tell you something important. Amanda closed her eyes, leaning back against the leather seat. Grandmother Dolores had raised her and Quincy after their mother died, filling their small apartment with laughter, wisdom, and the unshakable belief that they could be anything they wanted to be. We're almost there, James said quietly, his hand reaching across the console to cover hers. The touch sent warmth shooting up Amanda's arm, but more than that, it grounded her. Here was this powerful man, who could be anywhere in the world, choosing to drive through Queens at 11 p.m. because her family needed her. Thank you, she whispered. You don't need to thank me. At the hospital, James insisted on coming inside. Amanda was too worried to argue, and part of her, the part that felt small and scared in hospital corridors, was grateful for his solid presence beside her. They found Quincy in the waiting area, his usually confident demeanor cracked with worry. At 24, he was finishing his master's in engineering, brilliant and driven like Amanda, but right now, he looked like the scared little boy she remembered from their mother's funeral. Quincy, this is James Hart. James, my brother Quincy. Quincy's eyes widened slightly. He clearly recognized the name, but James extended his hand with genuine warmth. I've heard wonderful things about you, James said. Amanda's very proud. She talks about me at work. Quincy managed a weak smile. Constantly. Your grandmother raised remarkable grandchildren. A nurse appeared, calling Amanda's name. You can see her now, but just for a few minutes. Amanda started toward the room, then turned back. James was settling into an uncomfortable plastic chair, clearly prepared to wait however long necessary. You don't have to stay, she said. I'm not going anywhere. In her grandmother's room, Amanda found Dolores Lewis looking smaller than she remembered, her dark skin papery against white hospital sheets, but her eyes were alert, sharp as ever. There's my baby girl, Dolores whispered, reaching for Amanda's hand. I was wondering when you'd bring him by. Bring who by, Grandma? That man in the waiting room, the one who loves you. Amanda's heart skipped. Grandma, he's my boss. Child, I may be old, but I'm not blind. That man drove you to Queens at midnight. That's not boss behavior. Dolores squeezed Amanda's hand with surprising strength. That's love behavior. It's complicated. Love always is. But baby, when someone sees the real you and chooses to stay, that's not complicated. That's a blessing. Amanda felt tears prick her eyes. Mama always said you were the wise one. Your mama also said love finds you when you least expect it. Dolores's smile was soft with memory. In places you never thought to look. When Amanda returned to the waiting room, she found James talking quietly with Quincy about engineering programs and startup opportunities. Seeing them together, the billionaire CEO and her grad student brother, discussing ideas like equals, she felt something shift in her chest. James looked up as she approached, his eyes searching her face. How is she? Stubborn as ever. She wants to meet you properly once she's feeling better. I'd be honored. They drove back to Manhattan in comfortable silence, but Amanda's mind raced. Her grandmother's words echoed with her mother's, creating a chorus of voices telling her to stop running from what was right in front of her. When James pulled up outside her East Village building, neither of them moved to get out. "Amanda," he said finally, turning to face her in the dim light of the car. "What I was trying to tell you earlier." "James, don't." The words came out sharper than she intended. "Please don't say something we can't take back. What if I don't want to take it back?" Amanda stared into those grey eyes that saw too much, and realized she was standing at the edge of a cliff she'd been approaching for 3 years. "What if I don't want to take it back?" The words hung in the air between them like a challenge to the universe itself. Amanda stared into James's grey eyes, seeing her own reflection in their depths, a woman on the precipice of changing everything she'd carefully built. "James," she whispered, but he was already moving. His hand cupped her face with infinite gentleness, thumb tracing the curve of her cheekbone as if memorizing its shape. The interior of the Aston Martin felt smaller, more intimate, the city lights beyond the windows fading to irrelevance. "I love you," he said simply, and the world tilted on its axis. 3 words, simple syllables that destroyed every carefully constructed barrier Amanda had spent 3 years building. She felt tears she hadn't expected prick her eyes, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "You can't," she managed. "We can't." "Why not?" His voice was soft steel, determined and gentle simultaneously. "Because of work? Because of what people will say?" "Amanda, I've spent my entire life caring what people think, doing what's expected, following rules written by people who never risked anything real." His other hand found hers, fingers intertwining with perfect familiarity. "But when I'm with you, none of that matters. You make me want to be brave." Amanda's resolve cracked like ice in spring. "James, if we do this, if we cross this line, there's no going back. Helena will destroy us both. The board, the company, everything you've built. Let them try." The fierce protectiveness in his voice made her heart stutter. "Amanda, I would burn it all down before I let anyone hurt you." The intensity of his declaration should have frightened her. Instead, it unlocked something she'd kept buried for so long, the part of her that wanted to be someone's priority, someone's choice, someone's everything. "I love you too," she whispered, and felt the last of her walls crumble. James's smile was radiant, transformative. He leaned closer, his forehead touching hers in a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. "Say it again," he murmured. "I love you, James Hart." The kiss that followed was inevitable, soft and desperate, and full of 3 years of unspoken longing. Amanda felt herself drowning in the taste of him, the warmth of his mouth, the way he held her like she was precious beyond measure. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, James pressed his lips to her temple. "Come upstairs with me," Amanda heard herself say, the words escaping before caution could stop them. James pulled back to study her face. "Are you sure?" "No," she admitted honestly. "But I don't care anymore." Amanda's studio apartment felt different with James in it. He filled the small space with his presence, making her second-hand furniture and thrift store finds seem charming rather than modest. She watched him take in details, the photos of her family, the books stacked everywhere, the small herb garden on the fire escape. "It's perfect," he said, and she knew he meant it. "It's completely you. It's tiny compared to what you're used to." "Amanda," he turned to face her, his expression serious. "I've spent years in penthouse apartments that felt like museums. This feels like home." The word hung between them, weighted with possibility and promise. Amanda felt her heart expand, making room for dreams she'd never dared to dream. "Wine?" she offered, suddenly nervous. "Whatever you have." She moved to the small kitchen, hyper-aware of his eyes on her, as she opened a bottle of red wine Quincy had brought her for her birthday. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured 2 glasses. "Amanda," James appeared behind her, his hands settling on her waist. "We don't have to do anything you're not ready for." She turned in his arms, wine forgotten. "I've been ready for 3 years, I just didn't know it." The admission hung between them, raw and honest. James cupped her face again, his thumbs stroking across her cheekbones. "You're beautiful," he whispered. "So incredibly beautiful." This time, when he kissed her, Amanda let herself fall completely. She wound her arms around his neck, pressing closer, losing herself in the warmth and safety of his embrace. This was what her grandmother had meant, this feeling of rightness, of coming home to yourself in someone else's arms. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, James rested his forehead against hers. "I want to stay," he said quietly. "But I need you to be sure. Once we cross this line, Amanda, I'm never letting you go." The possessiveness in his voice should have alarmed her. Instead, it sent heat spiraling through her veins. She thought of her grandmother's words, her mother's wisdom, the 3 years of carefully maintained distance that had led to this moment. "Stay," she whispered against his lips. "Please stay." The next morning, Amanda woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of someone moving quietly in her kitchen. For a moment she was disoriented. Then memory flooded back, bringing with it a rush of warmth and wonder. James stood at her small stove, wearing his dress shirt from yesterday, and somehow making her cramped kitchen look like a luxury hotel suite. He'd found her coffee, her favorite mug, had even located the sugar she kept hidden behind the flour. "Good morning," he said, turning with a smile that could have powered the entire East Village. "Good morning." Amanda pulled her robe tighter, suddenly shy. In daylight, the magnitude of what they'd done settled over her like a comfortable weight. "I made coffee. I hope you don't mind that I borrowed your shower." "Of course not." She accepted the mug he offered, their fingers brushing in a spark of electricity. "James, about last night, no regrets," he said firmly, moving closer. "Please tell me no regrets." Amanda looked up into his face, saw the vulnerability beneath his confident exterior, and felt her heart swell with tenderness. "No regrets," she confirmed, and watched relief flood his features. He kissed her forehead, soft and reverent. "I have to go home and change before work. But Amanda, everything's different now, you know that, right?" She nodded, understanding the weight of what he meant. They couldn't go back to professional distance, couldn't pretend last night hadn't shifted the entire foundation of their relationship. "Helena's going to notice," Amanda said quietly. "Let her notice." James's voice carried the steel she'd heard him use in board meetings. "I'm done hiding how I feel about you." After he left, Amanda stood in her kitchen holding the mug he'd made for her, trying to process the seismic shift in her world. She was in love with James' heart. He was in love with her. Everything had changed. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Enjoy your night, Amanda. But remember, what goes up must come down. Some of us know exactly how to make that happen. H." Amanda's blood ran cold. Helena had been watching. Helena knew. And Helena Lane never made threats she wasn't prepared to carry out. Amanda arrived at Hart Industries 30 minutes early, but Helena was already waiting. She stood beside Amanda's desk, like a predator claiming territory, her emerald dress perfectly pressed, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. In her manicured hands was a manila envelope that made Amanda's stomach drop to her shoes. "Good morning, darling," Helena purred, her voice honey over poison. "Sleep well?" Amanda set down her purse with careful composure, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "Helena, you're here early." "Oh, I've been here for hours. Had some research to catch up on." Helena's green eyes glittered with malicious satisfaction. Amazing what private investigators can discover these days, especially when they have the right motivation. The manila envelope seemed to pulse with threat. Amanda forced herself to meet Helena's gaze steadily, drawing on 3 years of corporate poker face. "I'm not sure what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything, sweetie. I'm stating facts." Helena opened the envelope with theatrical precision, pulling out a series of photographs that made Amanda's blood freeze. James helping her into his car outside the hospital. James's hand on her face in the intimate lighting of the Aston Martin. James following her into her apartment building. And finally, most damning of all, James leaving her building the next morning, wearing yesterday's clothes with the unmistakable look of a man who hadn't gone home. Interesting timeline, don't you think? Helena spread the photos across Amanda's desk like playing cards. 11:47 p.m. to 7:23 a.m. That's quite a long consultation. Amanda's hands remained steady as she gathered the photographs, but inside, she was calculating rapidly. How many people had Helena shown these to? How long before they reached the board of directors? "These prove nothing," Amanda said quietly. "Oh, honey, they prove everything." Helena leaned closer, her perfume cloying and expensive. "Want to know what else I have? Financial records showing James personally approved your salary increases, 3 of them in 2 years. Hotel receipts from business trips where you shared adjoining rooms. Meeting logs showing private conferences that lasted well beyond normal business hours." Each revelation hit like a physical blow. Helena had been building a case for months, maybe years, documenting every interaction that could be twisted into evidence of impropriety. "You've been watching us." I've been protecting this company from scandal. Helena's mask of civility finally dropped, revealing the venom beneath. Do you have any idea what this will do to Hart Industries' reputation? A CEO having an affair with his secretary? The board will crucify him. The shareholders will demand his head. Everything James has built will crumble because he couldn't keep his hands off the help. The words were designed to wound, to remind Amanda of her place in the corporate hierarchy. But instead of shrinking, Amanda felt something steel-hard form in her chest. What do you want? Helena's smile returned, triumphant and cruel. Smart girl, I want you gone. Resignation letter on my desk by noon, citing personal reasons. Clean, simple, and final. And if I refuse, then by 5 p.m. today, every board member, every major client, and every financial journalist in the city will have copies of these photos, along with a detailed report about how James Hart compromised his professional judgment for a piece of... Finish that sentence. James's voice cut through Helena's poison like a blade. He stood in the elevator doorway, his grey eyes glacial with fury, his presence filling the reception area with barely controlled rage. Helena spun around, her confident mask slipping for just a moment before snapping back into place. James, perfect timing. I was just discussing some personnel matters with Amanda. I heard exactly what you were discussing. James moved forward with predatory grace, his attention fixed on Helena like a targeting system. And I believe you were about to leave. Actually, I think we should talk privately about what's best for the company. Helena's voice carried a hint of desperation beneath the bravado. No. James stopped beside Amanda's chair, his hand settling protectively on her shoulder. The gesture was deliberate, public, and utterly without shame. Anything you have to say to me, you can say in front of Amanda. Helena's face went pale, then flushed red with humiliation and rage. James, you're making a mistake. The board will never accept this. Your reputation, your company. My company will survive. My reputation will recover. But Helena? James's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more threat than shouting. Your career here is over. You can't fire me for telling the truth. I can fire you for blackmail, harassment, and corporate espionage. Tobias Reed's voice joined the conversation as he emerged from the elevator carrying a thick legal folder. Helena Lane, consider this your official termination notice. Helena stared at the folder in Tobias's hands, her perfect composure finally cracking completely. This is illegal. I'll sue for wrongful termination. With what evidence? Tobias opened the folder, revealing documents and printed emails. We have extensive records of your unauthorized surveillance activities, your attempts to interfere with client relationships, and your use of private investigators to stalk company employees. Any lawyer worth their degree will tell you to walk away quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. Helena looked between James, Amanda, and Tobias, clearly calculating her options and finding them all closed off. This isn't over, she said finally, her voice shaking with barely contained fury. The board will hear about this. The shareholders. Everyone will know exactly what kind of man you really are, James Hart. Then they'll know I'm a man who protects the people I love, James replied calmly. And I'm completely fine with that. Helena gathered the photographs with trembling hands, her perfect facade crumbling as security guards appeared to escort her from the building. She paused at the elevator, turning back with one final venomous glare. Enjoy your victory, Amanda. But remember, I'm not the only one who disapproves of this arrangement. The board meeting is next week. Let's see how long your fairy tale lasts when his investors start pulling out. The elevator doors closed on her threat, leaving Amanda, James, and Tobias in charged silence. How bad is it? Amanda asked quietly. Tobias adjusted his glasses, his expression grim. Helena's right about one thing. The board won't be thrilled, but legally we're solid. As long as there's no evidence of actual impropriety in business decisions. There isn't, James said firmly. Every promotion Amanda received was merit-based. Every decision I made regarding her work was professionally justified. Good, but James, Tobias's tone carried warning, you need to be prepared for pushback. Some of the board members are old school. They won't appreciate complications. After Tobias left, Amanda and James stood in the reception area, the weight of what had just happened settling between them like dust. I'm sorry, Amanda said quietly. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Don't. James turned to face her, his hands cupping her face with infinite gentleness. Don't you dare apologize for loving me. James, Helena's right about the board. If they turn against you, then I'll deal with it. "Amanda, look at me." He waited until her eyes met his. "I meant what I said. I would rather lose everything than lose you." The sincerity in his voice made her chest tight with emotion. But as she looked into his grey eyes, Amanda couldn't shake Helena's final warning. The board meeting was next week, and Helena Lane had made it clear this was only the beginning of the war. The emergency board meeting was called for Monday morning, but the real war began on Friday afternoon when Cornelius Morrison walked into James's office unannounced. Amanda was reviewing quarterly reports when Morrison's distinctive voice carried through the glass walls, tight with controlled anger. She couldn't make out words, but body language spoke volumes. Morrison's rigid posture, James's defensive stance, the way both men's hands moved in sharp, cutting gestures. "This doesn't look good," murmured Delilah Santos, the head of human resources, as she approached Amanda's desk with a stack of personnel files. At 45, Delilah had survived 3 corporate restructures and knew the signs of impending disaster. "Mr. Morrison seems upset," Amanda said carefully, maintaining professional distance even as her heart hammered with worry. "Upset is putting it mildly. Word is, someone sent him those photos Helena was waving around, along with some very creative interpretations of company policy." Delilah's dark eyes held sympathy and warning in equal measure. "Amanda, honey, you need to be prepared for whatever's coming." Before Amanda could respond, Morrison's voice rose loud enough to carry through the glass. "Completely unacceptable breach of professional standards." The office door opened, and Morrison emerged with storm clouds in his eyes. He paused at Amanda's desk, his gaze cold and assessing. "Ms. Lewis," his tone was arctic, "I trust you understand the gravity of this situation. Mr. Morrison, if you have concerns about my work, your work was never the issue." Morrison's interruption was sharp as a blade. "Your judgment, however, is another matter entirely." He left without another word, his departure feeling like a death knell. Through the glass walls, Amanda could see James standing motionless in his office, his hands braced against his desk, his shoulders rigid with tension. Delilah whistled low. "Helena's been busy." That evening, Amanda found James in his office at 9 p.m., surrounded by legal documents and financial projections. He looked up when she knocked, and the exhaustion in his grey eyes made her chest ache. "You should go home," he said softly. "This is going to get ugly, and I don't want you caught in the crossfire." Too late for that. Amanda closed the door behind her, moving to stand beside his chair. "Delilah says 3 board members have already called emergency meetings. Morrison's threatening to pull his account." 4 board members, James corrected grimly. "And Morrison's not threatening. He's already started transferring his assets to Kellner and Associates." The news hit Amanda like a physical blow. Morrison Group represented 30% of Hart Industries' annual revenue. Losing them would trigger a cascade of financial problems that could destroy everything James had built. "This is my fault," she whispered. "No." James stood, his hands framing her face with fierce tenderness. "This is Helena's fault. This is the fault of people who can't stand to see someone be happy. But it's not yours, Amanda. Don't you dare blame yourself." "James, maybe I should resign. If I'm gone, maybe Morrison will reconsider." "Absolutely not." The steel in his voice brooked no argument. "Amanda, I will not sacrifice you to appease narrow-minded bigots. I won't pretend to be ashamed of loving you, even if it costs you everything." James was quiet for a long moment, his thumbs stroking across her cheekbones as he studied her face. When he spoke, his voice was soft but unshakable. "You are everything. The company, the money, the reputation, all of it means nothing without you." The declaration should have thrilled her. Instead, it terrified her. Amanda could see the future stretching before them. James losing his company, his legacy, his life's work, all because he'd fallen in love with his secretary. "I can't let you do that," she said quietly. "You can't stop me." Saturday morning brought new ammunition for their enemies. Amanda discovered it when her phone rang at 7 a.m., Quincy's voice tight with worry. "Mandy, have you seen the business section of the Times?" Amanda's blood turned to ice. "What business section?" "There's an article about Hart Industries, about James, about you." 20 minutes later, Amanda stood outside a newsstand in the East Village, staring at the headline that made her knees weak. "Hart Industries, CEO's secret affair, raises questions about corporate governance." The article was a masterpiece of innuendo and carefully worded accusations. No direct claims of impropriety, but enough suggestion to plant doubt in every reader's mind. The anonymous source was clearly Helena, though her name never appeared. But it was the photograph that made Amanda's hands shake. A grainy shot of her and James outside her apartment building, his hand on her face, both of them lost in each other. Private moments stolen and weaponized. Her phone buzzed. James, probably seeing the same article, probably planning damage control. But when she looked at the screen, the number was unknown. "Hello? Enjoying your 15 minutes of fame?" Helena's voice was silk over venom, though I have to say Secretary seduces CEO has such a tacky ring to it. "Helena, the board meeting is Monday, darling, and thanks to the Times, every member will walk in already knowing exactly what James Hart values more than shareholder interests." Helena's laugh was cold as winter rain. "I do hope you're prepared for the consequences." The line went dead, leaving Amanda standing on a busy Manhattan street, holding the newspaper that could destroy everything she and James had built. Her phone rang again. James, this time. "Amanda, where are you? I saw the article." "Forget the article. Come to my apartment. We need to talk." An hour later, Amanda stood in James's penthouse overlooking Central Park, surrounded by luxury that felt as foreign as another planet. The apartment was everything she'd expected. Expensive, perfect, and utterly impersonal. "I've been thinking," James said without preamble, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, "about Monday, about the board. James, I'm going to make them an offer." His voice was steady, resolved. "They can have my resignation effective immediately, in exchange for a guarantee that Hart Industries continues operating without disruption." Amanda felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "You can't be serious." "I've already spoken to Tobias. The transition can be smooth if I step down voluntarily. The board can install Nathaniel Grayson as interim CEO. He's been gunning for my job for years anyway." "James, no. This company is your life." "No, Amanda." He moved closer, his gray eyes intense with conviction. "You're my life. The company was just something to do while I waited for you to love me back." The words should have been romantic. Instead, they felt like a death sentence. Amanda could see the future he was painting. James giving up everything he'd worked for, becoming just another wealthy man with too much time and too few purposes. "What if there was another way?" she heard herself say. James frowned. "What do you mean?" Amanda took a deep breath, her decision crystallizing with painful clarity. "What if I could give you back everything you're about to lose?" But the price she was considering would cost her the only thing that mattered, James himself. "What if I disappear?" The words fell between them like stones into still water, sending ripples of shock across James's face. Amanda watched understanding dawn in his grey eyes, followed immediately by horror. "No." His voice was flat, absolute. "Whatever you're thinking, the answer is no. Listen to me." Amanda moved closer, her hands reaching for his, needing the connection even as she prepared to sever it forever. "If I resign and leave New York, publicly, dramatically, then Helena gets what she wants, but you keep everything." "Amanda, the board can spin it as you ending an inappropriate relationship to preserve company integrity. Morrison comes back because the problem is gone. Your reputation recovers because you chose the company over me." James stared at her as if she'd spoken in a foreign language. "You're talking about destroying your career, your life, everything you've built here. I'm talking about saving yours." Amanda's voice remained steady despite the way her heart was tearing itself apart. "James, Hart Industries is your legacy, your father's legacy. I won't be the reason it dies." "My father's legacy?" James's laugh was bitter, hollow. "My father never loved anything the way I love you. He built this company because he didn't know how to build relationships. I won't make his mistakes." "This isn't a mistake. Loving you is the only right thing I've ever done." The words exploded from him with raw intensity. "Amanda, I spent 36 years sleepwalking through my life, doing what was expected, being who everyone needed me to be. You woke me up. You made me real." The pain in his voice nearly broke her resolve. But Amanda had learned something in the past 3 days, watching James prepare to sacrifice everything for her. Love wasn't always about holding on. Sometimes it was about letting go, which is exactly why you'll understand what I have to do. Before James could stop her, Amanda pulled out her phone and dialed a number she'd memorized but hoped never to use. "Tobias, it's Amanda. I need to schedule a meeting with the board for first thing Monday morning, before their session with James." "Amanda, what are you—" James reached for the phone, but she stepped back. "I'm resigning effective immediately. and I want to make a statement about my relationship with James Hart. Yes, I understand the legal implications. I'll take full responsibility. She hung up before Tobias could protest, before James could stop her, before her courage could fail her. There. She looked up at James, memorizing the planes of his face, the storm in his grey eyes, the way he stood like a man who'd been struck by lightning. It's done. Undo it. I can't. Amanda, I'm ordering you. You're not my boss anymore. The words came out sharper than she intended, and she watched them hit James like physical blows. I don't work for you. You can't order me to destroy your life. The silence that followed was deafening. James stood frozen, his hands clenched at his sides, his breathing rapid and shallow. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. How can you do this to us? Because there is no us if you lose everything that makes you who you are. Amanda forced herself to step closer, to cup his face in her hands one last time. James, in 5 years, 10 years, when the novelty of our love wears off and you realize what you gave up, that will never happen. You say that now, but when you're bored, when you have no purpose, when you start to resent me for the life you could have had, stop. James caught her hands, pressing them firmly against his face. Just stop. Amanda, look at me, really look at me. She did, drowning in grey eyes that held 3 years of shared glances, stolen moments, and a love that had grown in the shadows until it was strong enough to tear down walls. I love you, he said simply. Not your position, not what you can do for my career, not because you're convenient or safe or expected. I love you because you're brave and brilliant and real. I love you because you see me. Not the CEO, not the fortune, just me. Tears she'd been holding back began to spill down her cheeks. James, I love you because you would sacrifice yourself to save me, even though it's killing you to do it. His thumbs wiped away her tears with infinite gentleness. But Amanda, if you think I'm going to let you walk away to preserve some company that means nothing without you in it, then you don't know me at all. The board meeting. I'll face the board. I'll fight for us, for Hart Industries, for everything we've built, but I won't do it by sacrificing you. Amanda closed her eyes, feeling the last of her resolve crumble. What if we lose everything? Then we'll lose it together, and we'll build something new together, something that's ours. When she opened her eyes, James was smiling, not his corporate smile, not the polite expression he wore in meetings, but something warm and private and absolutely unafraid. Besides, he said, his voice gaining strength, you're forgetting something important. What? I'm James Hart. I didn't build this empire by backing down from fights. His smile turned predatory, and Amanda caught a glimpse of the steel that had made him one of the most successful CEOs in the country. Helena thinks she's won. The board thinks they have me cornered. They have no idea what's coming. What are you talking about? James pulled out his phone, scrolling to a contact Amanda didn't recognize. Remember when I said I'd been thinking? I wasn't just thinking about resignation. I was thinking about war. He dialed the number, and Amanda heard it ring once before a crisp female voice answered, Investigative Services, this is Canyon Black. Canyon, it's James Hart. Is the Morrison file ready? Everything you requested, Mr. Hart. Helena Lane's financial records, her communication logs, and some very interesting information about her previous employment that she neglected to mention on her Hart Industries application. Amanda felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. James, what did you do? What I should have done months ago. James's eyes held a dangerous glint. I played by their rules long enough. Now we play by mine. He ended the call and turned to Amanda with an expression that was equal parts determination and barely controlled fury. Monday morning, the board is going to learn exactly what Helena Lane is capable of, and by the time I'm done presenting the evidence, they're going to realize they've been manipulated by a woman who makes corporate espionage look like a hobby. Amanda stared at him, pieces clicking into place. How long have you been planning this? Since the moment Helena threatened you. James's voice was soft steel. Did you really think I'd let anyone destroy you without a fight? But as Amanda looked into James's determined face, she realized Helena had one more card to play, and it was the one neither of them saw coming. The board meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m., but at 8:45 Helena Lane walked into Hart Industries like she owned the building. Amanda watched from the reception area as Helena strode toward the executive conference room, her scarlet suit a declaration of war, her smile sharp enough to cut diamonds. In her hands was a leather portfolio that seemed to pulse with malicious intent. She looks confident, Tobias murmured, appearing beside Amanda's desk with his own stack of files. That's either very good for us or very, very bad. Where's James? Conference room B, making final preparations with Canyon Black. The evidence against Helena is substantial. Tobias adjusted his glasses, his expression grim. But Amanda, you need to prepare yourself. Helena's not the type to go down without taking everyone with her. As if summoned by his words, Helena appeared at Amanda's desk, her green eyes glittering with predatory satisfaction. Good morning, darling. Sleep well? Helena's voice carried false sweetness over razor wire. I do hope you're ready for today's revelations. Helena. Amanda kept her voice steady despite the ice forming in her stomach. I thought you were banned from the building. Oh, I'm here as a concerned former employee, providing testimony to the board about corporate malfeasance. Helena leaned closer, her perfume cloying and expensive. You see, I have some fascinating information about your dear James. Information that will make our little photos look like child's play. Before Amanda could respond, Helena pulled a single photograph from her portfolio, not one of the surveillance shots from before, but something that made Amanda's blood freeze in her veins. The image showed James leaving a hotel in Chicago 3 months ago. Beside him was a woman Amanda didn't recognize, elegant, sophisticated, her hand intimately linked with his. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m., and both were clearly dressed for an evening out. Meet Scarlett Thorne, Helena purred. James's companion during the Morrison Group negotiations in Chicago. Apparently your precious CEO has a pattern of mixing business with pleasure. Amanda stared at the photograph, her mind racing. 3 months ago, James had been in Chicago for a week, finalizing the Morrison contract. He'd mentioned dinners with potential clients, late-night strategy sessions, but this image told a different story. You're lying. Am I? Helena's smile was triumphant. Scarlett Thorne, VP of Client Relations at Morrison Group. Beautiful, isn't she? And so very willing to discuss her close working relationship with James Hart. The board will find her testimony quite illuminating. The words hit Amanda like physical blows. If the board believed James had been involved with multiple employees, it would destroy any defense they'd prepared. It would paint him as a serial manipulator who used his position to seduce women. Why are you showing me this? Because I want you to understand what you're really fighting for. Helena's mask of civility dropped completely. James Hart isn't the noble hero you think he is. He's a man who takes what he wants, consequences be damned, and when he's done with you, there'll be another Scarlett, another Amanda, another broken heart in his wake. You don't know him. I know men like him. Powerful, entitled, convinced they can have everything without paying the price. Helena straightened, her victory smile returning. In 10 minutes, the board will see these photos. They'll hear Scarlett's testimony via video conference, and they'll realize that James Hart is a liability they can't afford. Helena walked away, her heels clicking against marble like a countdown to execution. Amanda sat frozen, staring at the photograph that could destroy everything they'd fought for. The conference room doors opened, and James emerged with Canyon Black, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who moved with the confidence of someone who trafficked in secrets. James's expression was focused, determined, but when he saw Amanda's face, concern immediately clouded his features. What's wrong? Amanda held up the photograph with trembling fingers. James, tell me this isn't what it looks like. James took the image, and Amanda watched his face cycle through confusion, recognition, and something that might have been guilt. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Amanda, just tell me, were you involved with her? It's not what you think. The words weren't a denial, and Amanda felt something vital break inside her chest. Oh God. Amanda, let me explain. Mr. Hart? A voice interrupted from the conference room doorway. Nathaniel Grayson, the silver-haired board member who'd been circling James's position for years, appeared with barely concealed satisfaction. The board is ready for you. James looked between Amanda and the conference room, torn between explaining and facing the battle for his company. Amanda, please, give me 5 minutes to... Go. Amanda's voice was hollow, distant. The board is waiting. This conversation isn't over. Yes, Amanda said quietly, not meeting his eyes. It is. James hesitated for a moment longer, then disappeared into the conference room with Canyon Black and Tobias. The heavy doors closed with a sound like a tomb sealing. Amanda sat alone in the reception area, staring at the photograph that had just destroyed her world. Around her, Hart Industries hummed with normal Monday morning activity, but she felt suspended in amber, unable to move, unable to think beyond the image of James with another woman. Her phone buzzed. A text from Helena. "I tried to warn you, darling. Some men are just born to break hearts." 20 minutes later, raised voices began filtering through the conference room walls. Amanda couldn't make out words, but the tone was unmistakable. Anger, accusations, defensive shouts. The battle for James's career was raging, and she was no longer sure which side deserved to win. The conference room doors burst open, and James emerged looking like a man who'd been through war. His hair was disheveled, his tie askew, and there was a wildness in his grey eyes that made Amanda's chest tighten. "They voted," he said simply. "And? 6-3. I have 48 hours to provide additional evidence clearing my name, or I'm out." James moved toward her, his hands reaching for hers. "Amanda, about the photograph." "Don't." Amanda stepped back, and she watched the movement hit James like a physical blow. "Just don't. You have to let me explain." "Do I?" Amanda looked up at him, this man who'd made her believe in fairy tales and happy endings. "James, I defended you to everyone. I was ready to sacrifice my career, my reputation, everything, because I believed you were different." "I am different. That night in Chicago, you were with another woman while telling me I was the only real thing in your world." Amanda's voice broke on the words. "How many others were there, James? How many real things have you collected over the years?" James stepped closer, his voice desperate. "Amanda, you're not listening." "I'm listening perfectly." She picked up her purse, her movements mechanical, automatic. "I'm just finally hearing the truth." "Where are you going?" Amanda paused at the elevator, not turning around. "Home, to pack. You were right about one thing. Everything's different now." The elevator doors opened, and she stepped inside without looking back. As the doors began to close, she heard James call her name, heard his footsteps racing across marble, but the doors sealed shut, carrying her down and away from the man who'd taught her to love and then shown her why she shouldn't. 42 floors below, Amanda didn't know that the photograph Helena had shown her was a lie, and that James had 48 hours to prove it before losing everything that mattered. James Hart had 47 hours and 32 minutes to save his life, and he was standing outside Amanda's apartment building at midnight, soaked from the October rain, refusing to leave until she heard the truth. "Amanda!" His voice echoed off the brick walls of the East Village building. "I know you're up there. Your lights are on and your brother's car isn't in the lot, which means you're alone and overthinking everything." No response from the fourth-floor window, but he caught the shadow of a curtain moving. "That photograph Helena showed you, it's a lie, Amanda. A fabrication so sophisticated it fooled everyone, including me for the first 5 minutes." James pulled out his phone, rain droplets splattering the screen. Canyon Black traced the digital fingerprints. The metadata shows it was created last week, not 3 months ago. Still nothing. But James had learned patience from 3 years of loving Amanda Lewis, and he wasn't leaving without a fight. "Scarlett Thorne exists," he called up to the window. "She works for Morrison Group. We did have dinner in Chicago, but Amanda, she's a 63-year-old grandmother of 7, who spent the entire evening showing me pictures of her grandchildren and telling me how much she missed her late husband." A window opened. Not Amanda's, but Mrs. Kowalski from 3B, who leaned out in her bathrobe with murder in her eyes. "Young man, some of us have work in the morning." "Mrs. Kowalski, I apologize, but I'm trying to save the love of my life, and she won't answer her phone." The elderly woman studied him for a moment. Expensive suit ruined by rain, desperate expression, the kind of raw vulnerability that came from a man with nothing left to lose. "Amanda's a good girl," Mrs. Kowalski said finally. "Don't you dare break her heart." "I'm trying to fix it." Mrs. Kowalski disappeared back inside, and moments later James heard the building's front door buzz open. He took the stairs 3 at a time, his heart hammering against his ribs as he reached Amanda's floor. She was waiting in her doorway, wrapped in an oversized Georgetown sweatshirt, her dark eyes puffy from crying but still the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "You shouldn't be here," she said quietly. "I should have been here hours ago." James stopped just outside her apartment, close enough to see the pain in her face, far enough to give her space. "Amanda, I need you to look at something." He pulled out his tablet, fingers moving quickly across the screen. Canyon Black spent the last 6 hours dismantling Helena's evidence piece by piece. "Look," the screen showed a detailed forensic analysis of the photograph, highlighting digital inconsistencies, timestamp manipulations, and composite editing markers that revealed the image as a sophisticated fake. "The original photo shows me leaving the hotel alone," James continued, swiping to reveal the authentic image. "Helena's people grafted Scarlet Thorn from a completely different photograph taken at a charity gala 2 years ago. The lighting doesn't match, the perspectives are wrong, and the shadows fall at impossible angles." Amanda studied the analysis, her expression shifting from skepticism to confusion to something that might have been hope. Why would she go to such lengths? Because she's desperate. Because she knew that even if the board could overlook our relationship, they'd never forgive a pattern of sexual misconduct. James set the tablet aside, his hands aching to touch her. "Amanda, she played the one card that would destroy me completely. Your trust. But your reaction when I showed you the photo. You looked guilty. I looked guilty because for a split second, I thought it might be real." James's voice cracked with honesty. "I've been so tired, traveling so much, that I genuinely wondered if I'd somehow forgotten a night that important. The fact that I could even doubt myself for a moment made me sick." Amanda was quiet for a long time, her eyes searching his face for deception, for cracks in his story. James stood perfectly still, letting her see everything, his exhaustion, his fear, his desperate love. "The board meeting," she said finally. "Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Canyon will present the forensic evidence, but Amanda—" James stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "None of it matters if you don't believe me. I can save the company, keep my reputation, win this war with Helena. But if I lose you, I've lost everything that actually matters. James, I love you." The words came out raw, unguarded. "I love you so much it terrifies me. You're not just the only real thing in my world. You're the reason my world exists at all." Amanda's resolve finally cracked. She reached for him, her hands fisting in his wet shirt, and James caught her against him like a man grabbing a lifeline. "I'm sorry," she whispered against his chest. "I should have trusted you. I should have let you explain." "You have nothing to apologize for. Helena's been playing psychological warfare for months. She knew exactly which buttons to push." They held each other in the doorway, rain pattering against the hallway windows, two people who'd almost lost everything finding their way back to each other. "What happens tomorrow?" Amanda asked. "Tomorrow we end this." James pulled back to meet her eyes, and Amanda saw the steel that had built an empire. "Canyon has evidence that Helena embezzled over $200,000 from her previous company. Evidence that she's been selling Hart Industries' client information to competitors. Evidence that she orchestrated a campaign of corporate sabotage that makes our relationship look like a footnote. And Morrison." James's smile was sharp as winter. "Morrison got a very interesting phone call tonight from Canyon Black. Turns out he's been looking for a reason to cut ties with Helena ever since she started her little crusade. Apparently she made some very inappropriate advances during their contract negotiations. So he's coming back. He never really left. Morrison was testing us, Amanda, seeing if we'd fold under pressure or fight for what we believed in." James cupped her face, his thumbs stroking across her cheekbones. "We chose to fight." The next afternoon, Amanda sat in the executive conference room as Canyon Black systematically destroyed Helena Lane's credibility. The forensic evidence was damning, the financial records devastating, and the testimony from Morrison Group's security team, who had documented Helena's inappropriate behavior during business meetings, was the final nail in the coffin. Helena sat perfectly still throughout the presentation, her scarlet suit like a splash of blood against the mahogany table, her face a mask of cold fury. When Canyon finished, the room was silent except for the whisper of papers being shuffled. "Ms. Lane," Nathaniel Grayson said finally, his voice heavy with disgust, "do you have anything to say in your defense?" Helena's green eyes swept the room, landing finally on Amanda with undisguised hatred. "I have nothing to say to a board that values temporary passion over professional standards." Professional standards? Tobias Reed's voice was ice over steel. "You embezzled money, sold confidential information, and orchestrated a campaign of harassment that could have destroyed this company. Please don't lecture us about professional standards." The vote was unanimous. Helena Lane was banned permanently from Hart Industries, facing potential criminal charges, and required to pay restitution for damages. Security escorted her from the building while she maintained her perfect posture and venomous smile. After the board members left, Amanda found herself alone with James in the conference room where it had all began. "So," she said, moving to stand beside him at the windows overlooking Manhattan. "What now?" "Now." James turned to face her, his grey eyes soft with love and possibility. "We build something new, something that's completely ours." He reached into his jacket pocket, and Amanda's breath caught as he pulled out a small velvet box. "I bought this 3 months ago," he said quietly. "Before Chicago, before Helena's war, before everything fell apart. I bought it because I knew with absolute certainty that I wanted to spend every day for the rest of my life loving you." Amanda's hands flew to her mouth as he dropped to one knee in the conference room, where they'd shared stolen glances and hidden smiles for 3 years. "Amanda Lewis," he said, opening the box to reveal a ring that caught the afternoon light like captured starfire. "Will you marry me? Will you build a life with me that no one can ever tear down?" Through tears of joy, Amanda saw their future stretching ahead. Not perfect, not without challenges, but absolutely, unshakably real. "Yes," she whispered, and felt their new beginning bloom like sunrise after the longest night. 2 years later, Amanda Hart stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of their new office. Their office, because everything they'd built since that October night belonged to both of them, watching the morning sun paint Manhattan in shades of gold and possibility. Hart and Lewis Consulting occupied the entire 38th floor of a gleaming building in Midtown, and their client list read like a who's who of Fortune 500 companies. What had started as James's radical idea, leaving Hart Industries to build something completely new with the woman he loved, had become the most successful corporate consulting firm in New York. "Mrs. Hart." The voice behind her still sent shivers down her spine, even after 18 months of marriage. "You're here early." Amanda turned to find her husband leaning against the doorframe of their shared office, his grey eyes warm with the kind of contentment that came from a man who'd found exactly where he belonged. At 38, James had never looked more handsome. The stress lines around his eyes had softened into laugh lines, and success looked different on him now, lighter, more real. "I wanted to finish the Morrison expansion proposal before our 10 a.m. Amanda moved into his arms with the easy familiarity of two people who fit together perfectly. Besides, someone had to make the coffee. James pressed his lips to her temple, breathing in the scent of her hair. "How did I survive 3 years without morning coffee made by Amanda Hart?" "Amanda Lewis made terrible coffee," she reminded him, laughing. "Amanda Hart is a woman of many talents. That she is." James pulled back to study her face, his expression shifting to something more serious. "Speaking of talents, I have news. Good news or bad news?" "The best news." James's smile was brilliant. "Cornelius Morrison called this morning. Morrison Group wants to make Hart & Lewis their exclusive consulting partner. Full contract, 5-year commitment, with an option to expand internationally." Amanda's breath caught. Morrison Group had been their white whale, the client that could catapult them from successful to legendary. "James, that's incredible. It gets better. Morrison specifically requested that you lead the account. He said, and I quote, 'Amanda Hart has the finest strategic mind I've encountered in 30 years of business.'" Pride swelled in Amanda's chest, not just for the recognition, but for how far they'd both traveled from that night in the empty Hart Industries office when she'd been afraid to dream this big. "There's more," James continued, his hands settling on her waist. "Quincy's graduation is next month. PhD in engineering, full honors, with 3 job offers from tech companies that are fighting over him." 3? Last week it was 2. Morrison Group made him an offer yesterday. Head of their new renewable energy division. James's pride in her brother was evident in every word. "Your grandmother was right. She raised remarkable grandchildren." At the mention of grandmother Dolores, Amanda felt the familiar pang of love and loss. Dolores had passed peacefully 6 months ago, but not before dancing at Amanda and James's wedding with more energy than people half her age. "She would have loved seeing this," Amanda said softly, gesturing toward the office that bore both their names in elegant gold lettering. "She did see it, every time she looked at us together." James cupped Amanda's face with infinite tenderness. "She knew we'd build something beautiful." The intercom buzzed, interrupting the moment. Their assistant's voice, professional, efficient, perfectly trained, filled the office. "Mr. and Mrs. Hart, your 9 a.m. appointment is here. Canyon Black from Black Investigative Services." Amanda and James exchanged glances. Canyon had become more than their investigator. She'd become a trusted friend and advisor, the woman who'd helped them expose Helena's lies and build their new company on a foundation of absolute truth. "Send her in," James said. Canyon entered with her usual confident stride, her sharp eyes bright with satisfaction. At 44, She'd built her own empire on the principle that truth always won in the end, and her loyalty to James and Amanda had never wavered. "Good morning, power couple," Canyon said, settling into one of the leather chairs that faced their shared desk. "I bring news from the trenches." "Helena?" Amanda asked, though part of her no longer wanted to know. "Sentenced yesterday. 3 years for embezzlement, 2 for corporate espionage, with restitution requirements that will keep her broke for the next decade." Canyon's smile was sharp as justice. "She'll be eligible for parole in 18 months, but her career in corporate America is permanently over." Amanda felt a complex mix of emotions: relief, vindication, and surprisingly, pity. Helena had possessed genuine talent, real intelligence. If she'd channeled that energy into building instead of destroying, she might have achieved everything she'd wanted through legitimate means. "Any word on her plans after prison?" James asked. "Word is she's planning to write a tell-all book about corporate culture and gender dynamics in high-stakes business." Canyon's expression was amused. Her publisher isn't aware yet that most of her evidence was fabricated. "Let her write it," Amanda said quietly. "The truth has a way of protecting itself." After Canyon left, Amanda and James stood together at their windows, looking out over the city that had tested them, challenged them, and ultimately given them everything they dared to dream. "Do you ever regret it?" Amanda asked softly. "Leaving Hart Industries? Starting over?" James was quiet for a moment, considering the question with the seriousness it deserved. "I regret that it took a crisis to make me brave enough to choose love over legacy." "But leave Hart Industries to build this with you?" "Never." He turned to face her, his grey eyes holding all the depth of 2 years spent building something real together. "Amanda, Hart Industries was my father's dream. This," he gestured toward the office, toward the life they'd created together, "this is ours, built on our values, our vision, our love for each other and the work we do. And if someone tries to tear it down again," James's smile was confident, unafraid, "then we'll face them together, and we'll win. Because what we have now isn't just stronger than what we had before, it's unbreakable." Amanda reached up to straighten his tie, a gesture that had become ritual between them. "I love you, James Hart. I love you too, Amanda Hart. Today, tomorrow, and every day for the rest of our lives." As they prepared for another day of building their empire together, Amanda caught her reflection in the office windows, a successful businesswoman in an expensive suit, standing beside the man who'd seen her worth before she'd fully recognized it herself. But more than that, she saw a woman who'd learned that love wasn't about choosing between dreams and devotion. Sometimes, if you were brave enough and lucky enough, you could build something that honored both. Outside their windows, Manhattan stretched endlessly, full of other dreamers, other lovers, other people brave enough to bet everything on the belief that some things were worth fighting for. And in their office that bore both their names, James and Amanda Hart continued building their legacy. One truth, one day, one perfect love at a time. The end. What would you risk for a love that could change everything? Thank you for joining James and Amanda's journey. Your engagement with this story means everything, and your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a like and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.